Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just when everyone thought the Heavenly Tao Golden List had to be wrong, and that the kid was going to help Ren Wuxing truly rise, something unexpected happened. This kid, who everyone thought was Ren Wuxing's right-hand man, actually started eliminating anyone who disagreed with him and killing Sun Moon sect members loyal to Ren Wuxing while the leader was busy healing and obsessed with martial arts. This move stunned everyone. It all happened so fast. Even as observers, they'd all thought the kid was completely loyal to Ren Wuxing. After all, Ren Wuxing had entrusted him with the Sun Moon sect's power. A master like Ren Wuxing wouldn't trust just anyone so easily, right? But they were wrong. The seemingly honest and loyal kid was a viper in disguise. It shattered many people's worldviews. Who knew this young hero had such ambition? But hey, at least now everyone just saw him as a ruthless hero, even more so than Zhu Wuxi. Come to think of it, how many truly pure people are there in the martial arts world anyway? Most are corrupted by the world's ways. With that thought, everyone felt a lot better. Next, he'll probably make a move on Ren Wuxing himself. Some high-ranking figures whispered, watching the scene unfold. They knew this kind of situation well. Many of them had climbed to the top using similar tactics. And sure enough, the kid struck. He launched a surprise attack on Ren Wuxing while he was in seclusion, and it worked. Everyone was shocked to realize that the boy had become a master without them even noticing. A talent like that is one in a million. That's how people started to see him. They almost forgot about Dongfang Bubi and were eager to find out who this kid was and recruit him. Even if the heavenly ranking was wrong, they felt he had the potential to be on the list. The scene shifted, showing the kid taking over the Sun Moon sect after his sneak attack. To get everyone to submit, he named Ren Wuxing's daughter, Ren Yingyun, as the saint of the Sun Moon sect, winning over Ren Wuxing's supporters. From then on, the kid ruled the Sun Moon sect with absolute power. It was quite a story, going from a nobody to a religious leader. A true hero. Everyone agreed on that. But then, the scene changed again, leaving everyone stunned. The kid was now in the secret room where Ren Wuxing had been in seclusion, holding a yellowed ancient book. The words Sunflower Manual were barely visible. Isn't that the peerless skill Ren Wuxing gave him? Someone recalled a previous scene and exclaimed, it was the skill Ren Wuxing paid a heavy price for, even losing a master to Shaolin to get. Does he want to practice that skill? Everyone's breathing grew heavy, and a hint of greed flashed in their eyes. A skill valued so highly by a grandmaster must be incredible. Studying it would definitely be beneficial. Qin. That manual is really tempting. Yingyun sighed softly as he watched the scene unfold. I just wonder what's written inside. That even though the Heavenly Tao Golden List showed everything clearly, ancient books always appeared hazy and unreal, so even Yingyun was curious about the Sunflower Manual's contents. In fact, all of Zhou was curious. They wanted to know what kind of skills were recorded in the Sunflower Manual. What is this? Suddenly, the kid in the picture exclaimed, as if he'd seen something unbelievable. If you want to practice this skill, you must first castrate yourself. He held the ancient book and read the first few sentences aloud, his face full of confusion. The words echoed in the secret room, for a long time. Little did the kid know, his whispers were being broadcast throughout Zhou via the Tiandao Golden List. Everyone was dumbfounded. Castrate yourself? Could that mean? No way. Chapter 25 Yingyun, I always feel something is wrong. That if you want to practice this skill, you must first castrate yourself. When the kid muttered those words, everyone in Zhou was stunned. Castrate yourself? Could it be what they were thinking? The thought terrified them. Big man. What a skill, that's brutal. Lu Bang shuddered as he watched the scene unfold. A peerless skill might sound exciting, but if you had to castrate yourself to use it, what good was it, even as a master? I bet a young talent like that wouldn't practice something so evil, right? Lu Bang looked at the kid holding the Sunflower Manual, his face pale, and couldn't help but speak. The price was just too high. Well. Some officials and generals didn't react much. but a few martial arts experts' eyes flickered. They were obsessed with martial arts, so resisting the temptation of a peerless skill would be difficult, right? Still, they didn't think the kid in the picture would actually do it. He'd already become a master. With more time, his potential was limitless. He wouldn't need to pay such a high price to gain power. Probably not, right? Ming Dynasty. Something about that kid, doesn't he look like Dongfang Booby? Zhu Yuanzhang examined the kid in the picture, glanced at Zhu Di, and said suspiciously. Are they related? Ever since Zhu Wushi ran away, Lao Zhu felt like his imperial career was losing its spark. Now he'd found a talented kid, and he was naturally tempted. But Zhu Yuanzhang, always observant, suspected the Heavenly Tao Golden List hadn't made a mistake. The kid's appearance was becoming increasingly similar to Dongfang Booby's. That's. Zhu Di paused, glanced at the Heavenly Tao Golden List, and said cautiously. Probably not. Dongfang Booby isn't a man, or is she? Suddenly, a thought struck Zhu Di, and he froze. The image of Dongfang Booby had been so deeply ingrained in their minds. They'd assumed she was just an ugly woman. But now, looking at the sunflower manual, Zhu Di hesitated. Was Dongfang Booby really a woman? Qin. I suddenly have a bad feeling. Yingyun looked up at the sky, frowning, and glanced at Yingyun, who was nearby. He asked suspiciously. You're not up to something, are you? Chapter 22. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. What's your take on the screw-ups in the Heavenly Tao Golden List? For some reason, Yingyun always felt something was off about how agreeable Yingyun was acting. This kid just doesn't strike me as the type to play nice after getting chewed out. What? No way. You're barking up the wrong tree. Hearing this, Yingyun immediately denied it, saying without a moment's hesitation, how would I know if there are mistakes in the Heavenly Tao Golden List? A guy like me, determined to survive to the very end, isn't about to ditch his stay alive as long as you can strategy because of some mild pressure. No chance. Really? Hearing this, Yingyun paused, suspicion flashing in his eyes. He nodded and said in a deep voice, you better not be playing me, kid. Or you'll find out what it means to face the unpredictable power of heaven. Right then, Yingyun secretly decided that after the Heavenly Tao Golden List's little show was over, he'd find a few suitable women, and marry them off to this kid, one by one. He figured he had to get this kid settled down and doing what a prince should do. And if that didn't work, he'd lock the kid up and not let him out until he'd popped out at least 3 kids. Then, he'd personally train him to be the future heir to the Qin Dynasty. And once I've trained up a successor, this kid can be emperor nice and easy. Dare he slack off? The nerve. Seeing Yingyun's cold glare, Yingyun focused, held his breath, and pretended not to notice. Worst comes to worst, if he gets caught, he'll just bolt in the middle of the night. He still didn't believe anyone in this whole of Kyushu could take him down. Is he gonna chop off his own junk? Just as those thoughts flashed through Yingyun's mind, he suddenly noticed the image in the void had shifted again, and it was a little darker than before. He couldn't help but be stunned, realizing what was about to happen. Actually, it wasn't just Yingyun, the entire Kyushu noticed the changes in the sky. The young man held the broken blade in his hand, roasting it in the candle flame for a while. The flickering candlelight was the only light source in the entire secret room. The flames danced across the young man's face, making him look a little scary. Crack! Just as everyone was hesitant, the young man raised his hand, and with a click, a streak of blood spurted out. All of Jojo fell silent. At that moment, combined with the cultivation method of the sunflower manual, even the dullest people realized what this young hero had done. They were all stunned. Then, there was an uproar. Who would have imagined that he, who was once favored by so many, would actually take such a path? From today on, my name is Dongfang Booby. Then, as everyone watched in shock and disbelief, the young man on the screen endured the intense pain and spoke word by word, the sun rises in the east, only I am invincible. After that, he finally fainted from the pain. Then, Jojo was stunned again. Dongfang Bubi. That name sounds familiar. Is it her? Almost everyone thought of the woman who was called the Tobacco Killer, and they were all dumbfounded. The Heavenly Tao Golden List wasn't wrong after all. The young hero everyone admired was not only a hero, but a stone-cold savage. Isn't this a little much? Qin. This. Yingyun also felt like he'd been struck by lightning, utterly shocked by the scene before him. To think the androgynous and weird-looking Dongfang Bubi had such a backstory. It was a real shocker. Suddenly, Yingyun seemed to remember something, and he glanced at Yingyun who was secretly smirking. It seemed like from the start, this kid knew Dongfang Bubi was off, and had been trying to lead him astray. Even told him to learn from Dongfang Bubi. Who could ever learn from that? If he tried to copy that, his great-grandfather would jump out of his grave in fury. Could it be that this kid already guessed what was going to happen? Chapter 26, The End of Dongfang Bubi. Tragic. Deplorable. Dongfang Bubi. When that name appeared on the Heavenly Tao Golden List again, the entire land of Jojo was dead silent. They were all stunned. You see, not long ago, almost everyone thought there was something wrong with the Heavenly Tao Golden List. How could that promising young hero be the androgynous Dongfang Bubi? Everyone figured that something must have gone wrong somewhere, causing the mistake. Of course, as the scene unfolded, some people started to suspect the connection between Dongfang Bubi and the boy, but in the end, they didn't dare to dwell on it. But now it seems like the Heavenly Tao Golden List was right all along. That ignorant little boy, that emerging young hero, that thoughtful young man, actually, really went to such an extreme. The Sunflower Manual. If you want to learn this skill, you have to go neuter yourself first. In the stone room, Dongfang Bubi's voice, slightly trembling, vaguely echoed in everyone's ears. Thinking back to the first time they met Dongfang Bubi, everyone felt dizzy, and for a moment they couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. Great Han, Lu Bang frowned and was at a loss for words for a long while. Too brutal. As a man himself, he knew just how much grit it took to make a choice like that. He wouldn't dare, not on your life. Talent, but after a while, Lu Bang's eyes lit up, and he sighed softly. Quick. I have to get my hands on talent like that, not to go to that extreme for a breakthrough in martial arts. It was just shocking, unbelievable. The great Han needs someone like that. Daming, Forbidden City. Zhu Di, send a message to Jinyui. If the Ming Dynasty can't use Dongfang Bubi, don't let him go to another country. Especially not foreign powers like the Yuan and Qing. Zhu Yuanzhang's face turned serious, gone were the laughs and curses, now he was all business. If a ruthless person like that was recruited by foreign dynasties like the Yuan and Qing, it would be a disaster for the Ming Dynasty. Yes, father. Hearing this, Zhu Di's expression darkened and he nodded solemnly. He knew just how dire the situation was. Song Dynasty, you could say that all of Kyushu was shaken all over again. A strong martial artist isn't scary. Even if you meet them on the battlefield, they can't do too much against tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The rise and fall of dynasties depends on the national strength of each country. But the problem is, who wouldn't be scared of a ruthless person like that? If war ever broke out, who could handle that man hiding in their capital, assassinating people left and right? However, compared to the turmoil in Kyushu, Blackwood Cliff seemed strangely quiet. Sun and Moon God sect, in her boudoir, Dongfang Bubi, dressed in red, gently looked up at the scene in the void with a calm expression, as if she were an observer. Even though the Heavenly Tao Golden List had exposed her biggest secret, it didn't even ripple her heart. She didn't regret what she did back then. However, as she watched the scene unfold, Dongfang Bubi couldn't help but wonder, how would it all end for her? The story of Taidan Shinho was shown as well, from his rise to his demise. Just like her, what about her own tale? Chapter 23. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Edited content. I saw Dongfang Bubi's thoughts swirl, making the scene shimmer, morphing from a secret room into something else entirely. Dongfang Bubi began practicing the Sunflower Manual, his martial arts skills soaring to unimaginable heights. The Sun-Moon God sect, though weakened by a major purge, didn't crumble. With Dongfang Bubi's backing, it grew even stronger. At the same time, Dongfang Bubi's personality underwent a radical transformation, and even his appearance grew increasingly feminine, sending chills down people's spines. Finally, he appeared draped in that iconic red dress. Kyushu was stunned. The young hero they once knew was gone, replaced by the leader of the Sun-Moon sect, Dongfang the Invincible. Time flew, the scene shifted rapidly, compressing what felt like countless years. Everyone recognized this montage, understanding that nothing significant happened during that time, and the Heavenly Tao Golden List was fast-forwarding through his life. Otherwise, how could they witness a person's entire life in mere moments? When the scene refocused, everyone was shocked to see Dongfang Bubi becoming more and more peculiar. He wasn't just eccentric, he was obsessively devoted to a man named Yang Lianting. The people of Kyushu were baffled, but what followed was even more shocking. Ren Wuxing resurfaced. Dongfang Bubi had seized the leader position from Ren Wuxing but chose to imprison him in the Meizhuang dungeon instead of killing him. Now, Ren Wuxing had been rescued by a young man named Ling Huchong, and he was planning to reclaim the Sun-Moon God sect. Dongfang Bubi, watching this unfold on the screen, showed no reaction. He continued to dote on Yang Lianting, even handing over all religious affairs to him. Chaos erupted within the Sun-Moon God sect, with complaints echoing everywhere. Dongfang Bubi remained deaf to it all, content to embroider in his boudoir, neglecting everything else. When Ren Wuxing finally reappeared, the Sun-Moon God sect's followers deserted en masse. They joined forces with Xiang Wentian, Shangguan Yun, and others to storm Blackwood Cliff. This battle revealed the true extent of Dongfang the Invincible's strength, honed during years of embroidery. He faced 4 or 5 masters at once, including seasoned fighters like Ren Wuxing and slippery characters like Ling Huchong, yet, Dongfang Bubi wielded only an embroidery needle, holding his own against them all. He even seemed to be gaining the upper hand. Even more shocking, Dongfang Bubi brutally murdered Tong Baixiong, a man who had shown him kindness and saved his life numerous times, all because of Yang Lianting's goading. A chill ran down the spines of countless people across Kyushu. If Dongfang the Invincible could once be considered a hero or champion, now, madman was the only fitting description. He was completely insane. As everyone watched Dongfang Bubi grow stronger and stronger, nearly pushing Ren Wuxing and Ling Huchong to the brink, the unthinkable happened. Yang Lianting. This loathsome character became Dongfang Bubi's greatest weakness. If only I were a woman. A fragile voice echoed. The legendary version of Dongfang the Invincible reached its end. In a one-on-one fight, Ren Wuxing, Ling Huchong, and the others stood no chance. Even combined, they couldn't withstand Dongfang Bubi's onslaught. But ultimately, he didn't fall because of martial arts, but because of love. How tragic. What a waste. Chapter 27 God's Blessing. The East's undefeated choice. The sun rises in the East, I alone am undefeated. Unify the world for thousands of years. The East is undefeated. Ranked 7th on the peerless list. Receive a blessing from heaven. Just as everyone was reeling from the spectacle, the majestic voice of the Heavenly Tao Golden List reverberated, shaking the entire 9 provinces. Finally, the blessing. Everyone knew how powerful the rewards from these blessings could be. Now, the question on everyone's mind was what Dongfang Bubi would receive. A blessing? That at Blackwood Cliff, Dongfang Bubi looked up at the golden light spreading across the sky and smiled bitterly, a strange expression on his face. Knowing his fate, Dongfang Bubi felt a pang in his heart, infatuated with a man. Then, killed by Ren Wuxing. Not a happy ending, Dongfang Bubi murmured. He might enjoy wearing red and have changed, but he wasn't that far gone. Ever since he started practicing the Sunflower Manual, Dongfang Bubi had noticed peculiar changes. He not only liked red clothing, but he also found himself unable to live without makeup, something he'd once scorned. More importantly, his beard had fallen out, and his face had become paler. Now, it seemed this was the price of cultivating the sunflower manual, right? Dongfang Bubi couldn't help but recall his final words on the screen. Perhaps it would be better to be born a woman, boom. Just as Dongfang Bubi was lost in thought, infinite brilliance surged from the void, rippling outwards, enveloping Blackwood Cliff. Here it comes, the sight sent shivers of excitement down everyone's spines. The blessing had finally arrived. Heavenly blessing. 1. Eliminate the drawbacks of the sunflower manual. 2. Upgrade any 2 martial arts to the Grandmaster level. 3. Receive an opportunity to change gender. The soft voice echoed across the sky, lingering in everyone's ears. Then, stunned silence. They had expected the elimination of the sunflower manual's drawbacks and the upgrade of martial arts to the Grandmaster level. After all, iron-hearted god Zhu Wuxi had received similar rewards. But the last blessing, change, gender. Jojo fell silent. This challenge impacted their worldview. Could someone's fixed gender actually be altered? But considering the many miracles of the Heavenly Tao Golden List, they weren't as shocked. After all, if the elusive existence of Heavenly Tao was real, then changing gender wasn't a huge deal, right? I wonder what he'll choose. In Qin, Yingyun watched the figure on the screen, frowning slightly. Dongfang Bubi's life was nothing short of legendary. Even Yingyun, an emperor of the ages, had to acknowledge this and wondered about his final choice. Ahem, father, this sunflower manual, are you thinking of learning it? Just as Yingyun was waiting for Dongfang Bubi's choice, a voice echoed in his ears. Yingyun's face darkened. He glared at Yingyun, who was watching the fun. He'd almost forgotten that he had told this kid to learn from the strong on the peerless list. Yingyun didn't despise Dongfang Bubi's actions, but if you were to learn it, that would be a bit much. So, Yingyun ignored Yingyun's provocation. Hee. Yingyun snickered, then glanced at Guy beside Yingyun, planning to continue the conversation, but Guy looked up seriously and didn't acknowledge Yingyun at all. Boring. Yingyun shook his head, feeling utterly unfulfilled. However, what would Dongfang Bubi choose? Yingyun was curious. After all, in his memory, Dongfang Bubi only appeared briefly, and was beaten up by Ren Wuxing and others in the final battle. Then, he disappeared. Now, with the chance for a rebirth, what would he choose? Dongfang Bubi might be close to becoming an outsider, he hadn't fully become what he remembered. There was still a chance for him to change his fate. As the blessings announcement faded, the eyes of countless dynasties in Jojo turned to the sky. They waited for Dongfang Bubi's choice. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blackwood Cliff, inside her boudoir, Dongfang Bubi sat motionless at her vanity, the embroidery needle slipping from her fingers with a soft clatter. For a martial arts master at the peak of their power, like Dongfang Bubi, to lose their grip was unheard of. The shock brought by the Golden List was clearly immense. The heavens. The Golden List. After a long moment, Dongfang Bubi smiled faintly and raised a hand, using the heaven's blessing. Whoosh. A ball of light slowly materialized from Dongfang Bubi's body, a gentle, almost sacred light. More noticeably, Dongfang Bubi's androgynous features began to shift, losing their unnatural edge, and her form changed as well. She. When the light faded, Dongfang Bubi stood before everyone, completely transformed. The unveiling of her true beauty left onlookers stunned. If the old Dongfang Bubi was a force to be feared, then the new version embodied true elegance. Dongfang Bubi took a delicate step, and with a wave of her hand, the formerly strange and off-putting boudoir was completely refreshed. It no longer evoked a feeling of unease. I won't be joining any faction. The envoys from the dynasties, please leave. Her voice, light and clear, echoed from the top of Blackwood Cliff, and across all of Kyushu. No longer grating, but now pleasing to the ear. Everyone was stunned, a mix of regret and relief washing over them. For most, the fact that she wouldn't be joining another dynasty was a small victory. At the same time, they understood Dongfang Bubi's choice. It could be argued that this was a perfect outcome for her. Chapter 28, 6th on the peerless list, Zhang Sanfeng. Young Junbao, Dongfang Bubi had made it clear she wouldn't align with any force or dynasty, disappointing outcome. But not an unbearable one. In fact, for most dynasties, it was a win, at least they wouldn't have to constantly look over their shoulders, fearing Dongfang Bubi's assassinations. Moreover, many emperors had taken note of Dongfang Bubi's previous ruthlessness, Ren Wuxing had treated him well. Yet he still met a tragic end. It was a cautionary tale. The emperors, while not as obsessed with martial arts as Ren Wuxing, would be wary, unwilling to offer complete trust even after Dongfang Bubi had dismantled their power structure, and if such a near grandmaster harbored secret ambitions, it would spell disaster for any dynasty. Qin. It's over. Watching Dongfang Bubi fly from Blackwood Cliff, intending to wander through the 9 provinces, Yingyun felt a sense of finality. He sighed. These 9 provinces are truly full of hidden talent, that if not for the heavenly Tao Golden List, who would have known such an anomaly as Dongfang Bubi existed? I wonder what kind of being the 6th on this peerless list will be. That he sighed again, curiosity getting the better of him. Dongfang Bubi was labeled a grandmaster, but her strength clearly exceeded that level, and now, blessed by the heavens, the flaws of the Sunflower Manual had been eliminated, and her martial arts upgraded to grandmaster level. Her power would undoubtedly skyrocket. She might even break through the grandmaster limits and become a great grandmaster. Great grandmaster. Though most in Zhou only knew the title from the heavenly Tao Golden List. Even ranking above grandmaster implied unimaginable power. Who wouldn't be drawn to such a powerhouse? Number 6 on the peerless list, Zhang Sanfeng. Realm, grandmaster. Achievement, sweeping away evil. While Zhou remained engrossed with Dongfang Bubi's choice, the image above the void shifted and blurred, the voice of the heavenly Tao Golden List echoed once more, the grandmaster. Boom! The announcement sent shockwaves through Zhou. Ever since the concept of grandmaster had emerged, it had captivated everyone, even someone as powerful as Dongfang Bubi was only at the peak of the grandmaster level. It was hard to imagine a true grandmaster, and now, the 6th strongest on the peerless list was one. The thought sent shivers down their spines. Zhang Sanfeng. The martial arts world was shaken by the name, for good reason. It was well known. Dongfang Bubi and Taidan Shenhe had only been famous in their regions, but Zhang Sanfeng's reputation spread across all of Zhou. The founder of Wudang sect, Zhang Sanfeng. Was he still alive? They did some mental calculations. If he was alive, he had to be over 200 years old, right? After all, the Wudang sect had been around for 100 to 200 years. This founder had lived longer than anyone could imagine. Was this the power of a grandmaster? Everyone trembled. Could a grandmaster live for centuries? Wudang sect, the peaceful hall erupted in chaos, like a stone dropped into still water. Their old master was ranked 6th on the peerless list. The Wudang disciples knew their master was strong, but they had never seen him fight. Over time, they had forgotten, but now, the heavenly Tao Golden List revealed his grandmaster status and ranked him 6th on the peerless list. The entire Wudang sect was in an uproar. Their gazes turned to the highest hall on Wudang Mountain, their faces filled with awe. Even the 7 heroes of Wudang looked at their teacher with new eyes. You're amazing. As everyone's attention focused upward, an old man with white hair and a serene expression opened his eyes in the highest hall on Wudang Mountain. It was Zhang Sanfeng, the founder of Wudang. The heavenly Tao Golden List. Zhang Sanfeng looked at the image in the sky. His expression was calm, but a faint sigh escaped his lips. He seemed to remember something, and then, the image shifted, revealing a mountain village. A child named Zhang Junbao appeared. The young Zhang Sanfeng, the thought flashed through countless minds. They were shocked and watched carefully. After the Dongfang Bubi lesson, no one doubted the heavenly Tao Golden List anymore. Zhang Junbao and Zhang Sanfeng shared the same last name. Even if they weren't the same person, they had to be connected. But what puzzled everyone was that the young Zhang Junbao seemed unremarkable, like any other kid from the mountains. As the Golden List continued its story, years passed quickly. Suddenly, a sense of unease washed over everyone. The sooner someone started learning martial arts, the better. As people aged, their bodies became less flexible. If they wanted to start practicing, they could only achieve half the results with twice the effort. Success would be difficult. Tong Baixiong had taken in Dongfang Bubi around the age of 7 or 8 and taught him some martial arts. That was how he had eventually reached the top. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Now, Zhang Junbao was already 15 or 16, way past the prime time to start martial arts. How could he ever become a grandmaster? Could Zhang Junbao actually be Zhang Zhenren's father? The thought popped into everyone's heads. That would explain things. But even as doubts lingered, the scene above continued to unfold, though at a slower pace. It was as if a turning point was coming. Chapter 29, The Boy Leaves Home. One glimpse of a girl ruins him for life. Qin Yingyun watched the boy, Zhang Junbao, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He murmured. Is this about potential, or is he really Zhang Sanfeng's father? Honestly, not many in the 9 provinces had even heard of Zhang Junbao. He certainly wasn't as famous as Zhang Sanfeng. Even Yingyun couldn't help but feel a little lost. He still believed the Heavenly Tao Golden List was accurate, but he couldn't help but be curious. Starting martial arts at 15 or 16. Unless he gets some kind of crazy power-up to cleanse his system, he's not going to get very far. Guinea sighed. You can't just rewire the human body. Even if the boy looked bright, his foundation wasn't there. How could he become a grandmaster? Guinea's words cast a shadow of seriousness over the assembled officials. Was Zhang Junbao actually the current Wudong Zhang Zhenren? Do you guys think this golden list might actually be showing someone else's past? Yingyun couldn't help but sigh, clearly frustrated. Seriously, hadn't they learned anything from Dongfang Bubi? Sigh. Hopeless, he just wanted to keep a low profile. But he couldn't help himself. Right. Yingyun and the others snapped out of it, realization dawning on their faces. They were missing the forest for the trees. Stepping back, they saw the obvious. The golden list always showed the named person's past. Anything else was just impossible. I almost messed that up. Yingyun smiled ruefully, a sigh escaping him. It was a simple concept, but the difficulty of mastering martial arts had distracted them. But how could an ordinary person become a grandmaster? For most, starting at 15 or 16 meant being a nobody, going nowhere, but grandmasters weren't just anybody. I think Zhang Junbao's name is about to blow up, Yingyun murmured, eyes fixed on the picture of the boy finally leaving his village. Certainty filled his voice. He believed this young man was about to start an adventure that would be full of opportunities leading to the power he needed to become a grandmaster. The picture continued. The boy had finally decided to leave his small village and see the world. Really, all he wanted was that life of adventure and heroism. But family comes first. Zhang Junbao had always dismissed the idea of leaving, contenting himself with playing hero with his friends, but then, both his parents passed away from illness. After 3 months of mourning, Zhang Junbao finally decided to leave. Finally. Seeing Zhang Junbao's decision, the 9 provinces buzzed with excitement. Destined to become a grandmaster, he was sure to have opportunity around every corner, and his path should be mostly smooth, right? At Wudong, Zhang Sanfeng's eyes softened with nostalgia, as if he were back in that shy boy's skin a century ago. He used to be so awkward, so unsure of himself. And that was when he met her, a girl who made his heart race, a girl he could never forget. If only he'd had the courage to say more, maybe there wouldn't be a Wudong today, right? Oh well. He'd missed his chance. Zhang Sanfeng sighed, gently pulling out a pair of iron arhats from his robes, slowly rubbing them. Lost in memories, in the void, the picture continued, but instead of Zhang Junbao effortlessly defeating martial arts masters, he went to the Shaolin temple and became a lay monk. He even apprenticed himself to the monk Yingyun, who was in charge of the sutra library, becoming a servant there. This went on for years. Zhang Junbao worked hard, never slacking. But Shaolin strictly forbade lay disciples from learning any Shaolin martial arts. So, after all those years, Zhang Junbao was just stronger and more mature than when he'd arrived. He still knew nothing about martial arts. This really threw the 9 provinces for a loop. A Shaolin Temple errand boy? Years had passed. Even a martial arts prodigy would have been washed up by now. Why was Zhang Junbao so ordinary? Where was the spark? The peaceful 9 provinces were in turmoil again. The masters, they had undergone countless trials since childhood, and only then had their power been expanded a little at a time to reach this point. And Zhang Junbao, whose power had long been limited, how could he become powerful in the future? Just when everyone was confused, the scene shifted, and Yingyun finally started teaching Zhang Junbao martial arts. But he didn't teach Shaolin techniques, he just gave him a scripture and told him to study it himself. That was when Zhang Junbao's talent finally emerged. The continuous growth of his inner power surprised monk Yingyun. Just like that, more time passed. Everyone in the 9 provinces was practically numb. They watched Zhang Junbao study the scripture, sweep the floor, chop wood, make fire, day after day, year after year. It was so boring that even the golden list speed-up couldn't make it interesting. They also realized that while Zhang Junbao's inner power was impressive, he still didn't know any martial arts. Monk Yingyun hadn't taught him any moves. But just when everyone was dozing off, 2 thieves broke into the Shaolin Sutra Pavilion and stole Zhang Junbao's practice scriptures. Everything changed. To retrieve the scriptures, Yingyun took Zhang Junbao to Huashan. And it was at Huashan that Zhang Junbao met 2 people, one was called Yangguo, and the other was called Guoxiang. With Yangguo's help, Zhang Junbao defeated the thieves, but he was seriously injured and tenderly cared for by Guoxiang. At that moment, the unremarkable Zhang Junbao seemed to see the light again. Chapter 30, Deeply in Love. Zhang Sanfeng's lost love. That year, the boy met the girl, one look, and Zhang Junbao could never forget Guoxiang. But she was already in love. She treated Zhang Junbao as a friend, always kind, just a slightly older brother. Around Guoxiang, the quiet Zhang Junbao became even more tongue-tied. He could barely string a sentence together, which made the beauty laugh. Eventually, under Guoxiang's care, Zhang Junbao's injuries healed. Those days were probably the happiest Zhang Junbao had known since leaving home. But he knew that Guoxiang, though younger, was in love with someone else. Yangguo. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A real hero. Too bad, I want that kind of greatness for myself. Time flew by, and before they knew it, over a month had passed. Zhang Junbao had finally healed, and with no reason to stay, he had to return to Shaolin Temple with monk Yingyun. Saying goodbye was tough. Guoxiang was just a good friend, and now they were parting ways. He was sad, but not devastated. For Zhang Junbao, though, every moment with Guoxiang was etched in his memory. He'd never forget her. And who knew when they'd ever see each other again? But he couldn't disobey his master's orders. Reluctantly, Zhang Junbao said goodbye to Guoxiang and started back to Shaolin Temple. Anyone could see that Zhang Junbao was head over heels in love and there was no turning back. Wudong. Master, he has a past like this. Watching the heavenly Tao golden lists reveal, many Wudong disciples were confused. They glanced at each other, surprised, especially the Wudong's 7 heroes. They were completely shocked. Zhang Junbao. Maybe not many in all of Zhozhou knew that name, but the Wudong's 7 heroes, as Zhang Sanfeng's direct students, certainly did. The young Zhang Junbao was their master, Zhang Sanfeng. Silence fell over Wudong. Everyone looked up at the figure at the hall's highest point, a mix of shock and contemplation in their eyes. The NaN disciples had also been following the heavenly Tao golden list. This peerless list especially fascinated them. Even the NaN sect's strongest, NaN Miju, was just a decent master, slightly weaker than the 10th name on the list. And Gai Nye, a first-rate warrior at the time, had taken down 2 veteran masters in a row. The disciples were disappointed, but what could they do? Right now, though, the whole NaN sect was in a state of confusion. Not because of Zhang Junbao, but because of the other woman, Guoxiang. That's the name of the NaN sect's founder, Zhou Jiruo murmured, glancing at NaN Miju. Seeing her master staring blankly at the sky, looking lost, she was stunned, as the NaN sect's most talented disciple, Zhou Jiruo was favored by NaN Miju. She knew her master's composed nature. She'd never seen her like this. That is our NaN sect's founder, the heroine Guoxiang. Facing the disciples' puzzled stares, Master Miju sighed, a mix of understanding and sadness crossing her face. She whispered. I never knew Master Zhang and she had a history like that. Even Master Miju never knew why Guoxiang founded the NaN sect. She'd always assumed her master became a nun after becoming disillusioned with the world later in life. But now, it seemed she'd been undone by love. Above, the picture continued. After the young Zhang Junbao bid farewell to Guoxiang, he returned to Shaolin Temple, living the same routine, day in, day out, year after year. Honestly, everyone in Zhou thought the two of them were never meant to be. Zhou was vast. Their meeting had been a fluke, and Zhang Junbao was stuck at Shaolin Temple. How would they ever meet again? But, to everyone's surprise, the two almost lovers met again. This time, at Shaolin. Zhang Junbao was overjoyed when Guoxiang arrived, but when he learned she'd been searching all over Zhou for someone, his heart ached. He didn't say it, but he felt it. Eventually, Guoxiang, having failed to find Yangguo, left in despair. Before leaving, she gave Zhang Junbao a pair of iron arhats and told him to seek out her parents in Xianyang City if he ever needed help, but when it rains, it pours. The three saints of Kunlun showed up at Shaolin to challenge them, derailing Guoxiang's departure. The three saints of Kunlun was just one guy. He Zudao, a master from the Kunlun school in the western regions. He was a master swordsman, and because he was unbeatable in piano, chess, and painting, he was called Three Saints. He came to Shaolin and took on master after master, including Abbot Tianming, Hall Master Wu Sei, and Hall Master Wu Xiang, and he beat them all. Shaolin was in serious trouble. Just when they were at their lowest, the young Zhang Junbao stepped up and fought the three saints of Kunlun using the Luohan fist he'd learned from the iron arhats. He defeated He Zudao and saved Shaolin. That's when everyone in Zhou realized that Zhang Junbao, who had quietly been cultivating his inner strength, had such incredible power. He mastered such a magical skill from a pair of iron arhats, that everyone in Zhou was shocked. What kind of enlightenment was that? They knew everything about the boy's progress. Other than a few moves taught by Yangguo, he hadn't learned anything, and with that, just relying on the arhat fist, he could beat a top master. I was wrong. Zhang Junbao is a true genius. In Daqin, Yingyun was surprised. He clenched his fist and said slowly. If I was in charge of Shaolin Temple, I'd take him as my personal disciple and teach him everything. He knew no one could resist such a young genius. Yingyun wasn't the only one. Gai Nie, Li Si, Wang Jian, and others felt the same. Even countless emperors across Zhou had the same idea. If nothing went wrong, under the Shaolin monk's guidance, Zhang Junbao would skyrocket, unstoppable. But why he left Shaolin and created the Wudong sect was a mystery. Was it betrayal? Or something else? As these thoughts raced through their minds, the picture shifted, revealing something confusing. Zhang Junbao was being hunted. And by the Shaolin monks? Because he'd stolen Shaolin's martial arts, violating the rule that outside disciples couldn't study the temple's techniques, everyone was speechless. Chapter 31 Shaolin is shameless. Saying goodbye at Shaoshi Mountain, absurd. At that moment, all of Kyushu was shocked. Unbelievable. Zhang Junbao, who had saved Shaolin and should have been treated like a hero, was being hunted by them because of a ridiculous rule. Even though Zhang Junbao explained that he'd created the Arhat fist from the iron statues and hadn't stolen any techniques. None of the Shaolin monks would listen. All that mattered was the temple's rules had been broken, and the rule breaker had to be punished. They forgot that without him, the entire Shaolin Temple would have been beaten by the so-called Three Saints of Kunlun. But facing his former mentors, Zhang Junbao, despite his superb Luohan fist, wouldn't fight back. He'd used too much energy against Hizudao and couldn't resist the Shaolin monks anyway. Finally, Yingyun rescued Zhang Junbao and Guoxiang from Shaolin, and they fled. That's when everyone realized Yingyun was also a hidden master. But he was still seriously injured in the monks' pursuit. As he died, Yingyun taught all the secrets of the Nine Yang magic to Guoxiang and Zhang Junbao, and then he passed away completely. But the Shaolin Temple's pursuit didn't stop. Shameless. Watching the Shaolin monks righteously talk about cleaning up the sect, that's all that came to mind. Shameless. Everyone had liked the Shaolin monks. They preached compassion, opposed killing, and rarely caused trouble in the martial arts world. But after witnessing this, where was the compassion? Hypocrites. That's the only way to describe the Shaolin monks at this moment. No matter how angry the people of Zhou were, the Shaolin monks finally cornered Zhang Junbao and Guoxiang. They were trapped by a rushing river, with powerful waves. Zhang Junbao had recovered some strength. He couldn't take Guoxiang with him, but he could escape on his own. He could even go berserk, taking half the Shaolin monks with him. But Zhang Junbao didn't kill them, he injured a few, and in despair, he and Guoxiang jumped into the river. Chapter 27. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. This scene played out for everyone to see, thanks to the Heavenly Tao Golden List. Instantly, countless people felt for Zhang Junbao. How could anyone treat their master that way? They wished they could go back in time and take out those hypocritical monks, one by one. Qin Dynasty. That Shaolin Buddhist sect is truly shameless, Yingyun scoffed, a hint of contempt on his face. Guess I was right not to let those monks set foot in Qin. Early on, the Buddhist sect had planned to spread their teachings, establish martial arts schools, and build temples in Qin. Yingyun had even considered it. But Yingyun's firm opposition put a stop to it. Now, it was clear that it was the right call. If the renowned Shaolin Temple of Kyushu was that corrupt and indiscriminate, what could you expect from the others? They were probably all cut from the same cloth. But now, Yingyun would never admit it was Yingyun's opposition. He took credit for it himself. The real hero, Yingyun, just looked at Yingyun pretending, without saying a word. Ahem, as if sensing Yingyun's gaze, Yingyun's face flushed slightly. He cleared his throat and continued. Of course, Yingyun's advice was invaluable at the time. I'll remember this. Yingyun couldn't take all the credit without acknowledging Yingyun a little, the ninth prince. Everyone was shocked again. Was the ninth prince involved again? After the last few incidents, they no longer dismissed Yingyun as just another deadbeat prince. Most figured that even though he was lazy, he was pretty sharp. Why else would he keep making such surprisingly insightful moves? Yep, he was a smart slacker. Whatever, destroy it. Seeing those suspicious and shocked eyes, Yingyun just rolled his eyes, not bothering to explain. Fine. But jumping into the river shouldn't kill someone, right? Yingyun watched the Heavenly Tao Golden List's projection. Seeing the raging river, but no sign of Zhang Junbao and Guoxiang, he wondered aloud. Zhang Junbao was already a grandmaster. Even severely injured, he wouldn't just vanish. As Yingyun spoke, everyone focused on the Heavenly Tao Golden List. The scene flowed on, the river winding through a mountain range before finally calming down. Then, Zhang Junbao and Guoxiang finally reappeared. Shaoshe Mountain, a long mountain range, with steep and rugged terrain, and strange peaks. At the foot of Shaoshe Mountain, the badly injured Zhang Junbao struggled to drag Guoxiang out of the river, collapsing on the ground, gasping for air. First, he learned the Arhat fist, then fought Hizudao, of the Three Saints of Kunlun, and was then hunted by Shaolin Temple, forcing him to jump into the raging river. He'd really pushed himself to the limit. But he and Guoxiang had survived. That was all that mattered. Guoxiang slowly came to, guilt and pain flashing in her eyes as she looked at the battered Zhang Junbao. If she hadn't given him the iron Arhat, he wouldn't be in this mess. But Zhang Junbao waved off Guoxiang's guilt. He might be an outcast from Shaolin, destined to be scorned by the martial arts world, but being with Guoxiang was enough for him. Time passed. In the next few days, Zhang Junbao's injuries healed, and his strength returned. Guoxiang, while protected by Zhang Junbao, was unharmed, though exhausted from their flight, but she recovered. Now, it was time to say goodbye. Guoxiang had to continue her journey through Kyushu to find the person she sought, and Zhang Junbao, as a Shaolin outcast, had nowhere to go. He considered going with Guoxiang, but after much internal debate, he just watched her leave, his heart filled with unspoken longing. Finally, he turned, dragging his weary body away from Shaoshi Mountain. Chapter 32, A Real Man Shouldn't Need a Handout. Shaoshi Mountain. Zhang Junbao never confessed the feelings he had held back for years. He watched Guoxiang go and turned away. Without Guoxiang, Zhang Junbao's confusion and helplessness overwhelmed him. Was there nowhere in the 9 provinces for him to find his place? Zhang Junbao couldn't help remembering Guoxiang's earlier words, if things get tough, find her parents in Xiangyang. Xiangyang. After hesitating, Zhang Junbao steeled himself and started walking towards Xiangyang city. He really had no other choice. Qin Dynasty. Guoxiang's parents seemed to be chivalrous people. Seeing Zhang Junbao's actions, Yingyun paused, musing. But someone of his talent, he could make a life in any dynasty. Yingyun, seeing it from an emperor's perspective, pointed out the solution to Zhang Junbao's dilemma, but Zhang Junbao was just a kid, who had spent his life as a Shaolin handyman. Martial arts was all he knew, so he never considered finding his way in the royal courts. Above, the scene flowed on. One day, Zhang Junbao came to a great mountain, filled with ancient trees and towering peaks. He asked some passers-by its name. It was Wudang Mountain. Wutang. The name echoed through the 9 provinces. Everyone knew Wudang Zhang Sanfeng. They had assumed Zhang Junbao went to Xiangyang, had adventures, then came to Wudang and founded the Wudang sect. But now it seemed that wasn't the case. Zhang Junbao heard the name Wudang and felt the mountain's majesty. He found a place to rest. A couple walked by, the woman nagging at her husband. They were staying with her sister and brother-in-law and hadn't made their own way, so they had to put up with slights. The woman blamed her husband for his incompetence. Resting on a stone, Zhang Junbao overheard and was shaken. If a man can't stand on his own, must he rely on others? The word struck him like a thunderclap, waking him from his confusion. Why should he compromise and be at someone else's beck and call? Even a peasant woman knew the value of self-respect, let alone a Shaolin disciple. Despite being expelled from Shaolin, Zhang Junbao still had the pride of a scion. The couple's words provoked him to give up on Xiangyang and head to Wudang Mountain. He found a cave and devoted himself to studying the 9 Yang scripture. He also gave himself a new name, Sanfeng. Zhang Sanfeng. Now, no one in Zhozhou questioned Zhang Junbao's identity. He was the founder of the Wudang sect, the Grand Master, Zhang Sanfeng. Wutang clan. So, that's how Master decided to create Wudang. The 7 heroes of Wudang watched the scene, their expressions complicated. They never knew that Wudang, one of the greats in the martial arts world, was born from the words of a peasant woman. It was so dramatic that the Wudang 7 had a hard time accepting it. The Qin Dynasty. Yingyun nodded, smiled, and said, Wudang Zhang Sanfeng is well deserved. Young Zhang Junbao's pride was inspiring. A man stands between heaven and earth, he should be honest and do what is right. But, having said that,